The mysterious classification of Earth. Derek rubbed his brow ridges in frustration as his eyes flickered between the lines of text on his holographic terminal. Something didn't add up. His task as a senior archivist of the Galactic Lexicon was simple: update planetary classifications and ensure all records were accurate. Yet, for the past 2 hours, he had been staring at an entry that made no sense. The file in question was labeled Sol 3, a relatively insignificant planet orbiting a middle-aged yellow star in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. Its civilization had barely begun space travel, and from all accounts, it should have been classified under Tier 4 pre-interstellar societies, the designation for species that had only recently left their homeworld. Yet Earth's classification wasn't Tier 4. It wasn't even a military concern at Tier 2. Instead, it held one of the rarest classifications in the entire Galactic Database. A bright red warning banner blinked at the top of the screen. Danger Leville. Max Azemuum. Status: Direct engagement prohibited. Designation: Doant Evn Then Kabot It. Derek exhaled slowly. He had encountered such warnings before, planets so lethal, so unpredictable, that the Galactic Council had essentially declared them untouchable. Usually, these worlds housed deadly atmospheres, biological extinction zones, or unpredictable cosmic phenomena. But Earth was nothing special. No planetary superstorms, no reality-bending anomalies, no star-eating phenomena. Just a small blue planet teeming with organic life and primitive technology. So why was it classified as a no-go zone? Derek ran a deeper search, but all the logs and reports he found were vague at best and disturbingly classified at worst. There were hardly any official incident records, just snippets, warnings, and urgent messages from various spacefaring civilizations. He scrolled down further, feeling his stomach tighten. Do not approach under any circumstances. Direct interaction leads to unpredictable consequences. Any attempt to manipulate or subjugate the species results in catastrophe. Each warning came from vastly different species, some from highly advanced empires, others from ruthless warlords. Even the enigmatic Kulari Collective, known for their emotionless logic, had a record stating, "Threat exceeds our predictive models. Recommend absolute non-engagement." Derek frowned. That didn't make sense. If this planet was dangerous, there should have been a reason. Advanced weaponry, dangerous physics experiments, or biological war zones. But there was nothing. Just an ordinary species in an ordinary solar system. He hesitated before activating his restricted access clearance, pulling up an ancient report buried beneath layers of security encryption. The last recorded incident involving Earth. The file was short, but it was enough to make Derek's blood run cold. 50 years ago, the last attempt. The Irith Dominion, one of the most feared militaristic empires in the galaxy, had launched a small expedition to Earth. They didn't even send their main fleet, just a few reconnaissance ships meant to test humanity's military strength. The Irith had conquered entire star systems in weeks. They had shattered civilizations far more advanced than Earth. They expected no resistance. They were wrong. The first message the Irith sent to their command center was confident. Planetary defenses are weak. No major energy shields detected. Ground forces technologically inferior. The second message was confused. Human resistance is highly irregular. They are not following standard planetary defense protocols. The third message was frantic. They are adapting. Fast. Their strategy shifts unpredictably. Our forces are struggling to maintain position. That was the last message the Irith ever sent. Their entire invasion force vanished within hours. No bodies were ever found. No ships recovered. The Irith never attempted another invasion. Instead, they did something that had never happened in the history of their species. They retreated. Not just from Earth, but from the entire sector. They refused to go anywhere near Sol 3 ever again. It wasn't just a loss, it was a psychological defeat. And the Earth weren't the only ones. Over the years, others had attempted to study, infiltrate, or manipulate Earth. Each one had encountered something strange, something that defied their understanding of warfare, logic, and even reality itself. They called it the human problem. Back to the present. Derek leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. What had the Earth encountered? Why was it that every report about Earth ended abruptly, as if those who investigated it had either vanished or decided that saying nothing was safer? His instincts screamed at him to stop digging. But Derek was an archivist. His job was to ensure historical accuracy. If Earth had been unfairly labeled a maximum threat, the mistake needed to be corrected. He reached for his console, ready to request an official review of Earth's classification. Until his screen glitched. A single new message appeared. It wasn't from his superiors. It wasn't from any official source. It was from somewhere else. The text was short, but it made Derek's breath catch in his throat. Stop looking. You are not ready for the truth. A chill ran down his spine. Who had sent that message? How had they accessed his secure terminal? More importantly, what did they mean by not ready? The words pulsed on his screen like a heartbeat. Derek swallowed hard, his mind racing with possibilities. He had one final decision to make. Would he leave the mystery of Earth alone, as everyone else clearly had? Or would he take the risk, dig deeper, and uncover whatever terrifying secret lay at the heart of humanity's classification? His fingers hovered over the console, and for the first time in his life, Derek wasn't sure if he wanted to know the answer. The Lost Expedition. Derek didn't sleep that night. The message haunted him. He had spent his career analyzing data from across the galaxy, and never, not once, had a database entry responded to his actions. Someone or something knew he had been searching for the truth about Earth, and they wanted him to stop. But Derek wasn't the kind of archivist to walk away from a mystery. His 4 fingers hovered over the holographic keyboard, hesitating for a brief moment before he overrode the security blocks on the Earth file. If the warning was real, then someone had gone to great lengths to keep the truth hidden. And if that was the case, then it meant the real story about Earth was far worse than anyone imagined. The screen flickered as a restricted report surfaced, one buried under layers of digital firewalls, accessible only to the highest-ranking officials. Its title sent a chill down his spine. Classified. The Lost Expedition. The mission that never returned. The report was dated 50 years prior, from a now-defunct scientific organization known as the Universal Research Initiative, URI. The initiative had been responsible for cataloging pre-interstellar civilizations, subtly influencing their progress, and preparing them for eventual integration into the galactic community. Earth had been one of their targets. The report detailed how the URI dispatched an advanced research vessel, the Vindicator, to conduct covered studies on Earth. The mission objectives were clear. Observe human behavior from orbit. Gather biological samples to determine resilience. Analyze Earth's military strength in case of future conflicts. Test human adaptability by subtly introducing controlled crises. A standard operation, nothing unusual. But then, the logs turned strange. The first few transmissions from the Vindicator were routine. Approaching Sol 3. Cloaking systems active. No detection. Surface scans indicate limited space technology. Minimal threat. Biological scans in progress. Preliminary results suggest humans possess advanced regenerative traits. Derek frowned. Advanced regeneration. That was odd. Most species healed at predictable rates, faster in lower-tier species, but nothing that warranted special attention. Then the next log entry appeared. Unexpected disruption in cloaking system. Human telescopes adjusting trajectory. Scanning. Lockheed Onto U.S. Derek's eyes widened. Humans had seen the Vindicator. That was impossible. The ship had state-of-the-art cloaking technology, capable of bending light and gravitational waves to become completely undetectable. Even Tier 2 civilizations struggled to detect it. And yet, somehow, humans had not only detected it, but locked onto it. The next transmission came hours later, and this time, the tone was different. Losing control of systems, human interference suspected. Attempts to regain command, failing. Ship unresponsive. We air. The message cut off abruptly. Then nothing. No distress call. No final transmission. Just silence. The Vindicator and its crew were never heard from again. A vessel with a 1,000-year record of successful operations had vanished without a trace in orbit around a supposedly primitive world. The Galactic Council conducted a brief investigation but found no wreckage, no escape pods, nothing. It was as if the Vindicator had never existed. The only clue left behind was an unusual broadcast intercepted from Earth shortly after the disappearance. It consisted of just 2 words. Nice try. The unspoken truth. Derek stared at the report, his heart pounding. He quickly pulled up other lost expeditions near Earth. There were more. An infiltration team sent to disable Earth's nuclear weapons had disappeared overnight, their final message simply stating, "They were expecting us." A covered observation probe attempting to hack Earth's satellite systems had self-destructed, with no command given from its operators. A rogue mercenary fleet that attempted to test Earth's defenses never returned. Their ships were found floating in deep space, completely disabled, but with no visible damage. Every time, the same pattern emerged. Every time, Earth outplayed its invaders. Derek felt a cold realization settle in his gut. It wasn't that Earth was too weak to be invaded. It was that Earth was already prepared. But how? How did a species that had barely left their planet outmaneuver some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy? The more Derek read, the more one terrifying possibility surfaced in his mind. Humans weren't surviving these encounters by chance. They were learning, adapting. Every attempted invasion, every covered operation, every failed experiment had made them stronger. And worse, they knew it was happening. Someone, or something, on Earth was aware of the galaxy watching them, and instead of fighting back openly, they were playing along, letting the galaxy think they were weak, letting their enemies expose themselves. And then, when the time was right, they made their move. Derek felt his breath hitch as he scrolled to the final entry in the report, a single sentence written by a panicked intelligence officer before the file was sealed away forever. Earth is not a planet of primitives. It is a hunting ground. The message that changed everything. Derek shut off the holographic display, his hands trembling. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. He had set out to uncover a clerical error. Instead, he had uncovered a silent war, a war that Earth was winning without ever firing a shot. And now, someone, or something, knew he had found out. A sudden knock on his office door made him jump. His screen flickered, and before he could react, his terminal powered itself down. Derek's blood ran cold. No one should have been able to access his system remotely. His office door slid open. Standing there was an unfamiliar figure, draped in shadows, with no identification markers on their uniform. They stepped forward, and when they spoke, their voice was calm, too calm. "Archivist Derek, the Council has summoned you." Derek swallowed. There was only one reason the Council would want to speak to him now. He had gone too far. And now he would learn what happened to those who asked too many questions about Earth. The summoning. Derek's feet felt like dead weight as he walked down the sterile white corridors of the Galactic Council's headquarters. The shadowed figure who had summoned him didn't speak. They didn't have to. The mere fact that the Council wanted to see him meant only one thing. He had uncovered something he was never supposed to find. For a moment, he considered turning back, deleting the files, pretending he had seen nothing. But it was too late for that. The Council already knew. And now he had to face them. The Chamber of Judgment. The great doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. Derek stepped into a massive, circular chamber, its ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. At the center, elevated above the room, sat the 11 members of the Galactic High Council. They were some of the most powerful and feared beings in the known galaxy. Their faces were obscured by holographic distortions, preventing anyone from identifying them. But Derek didn't need to see their faces to feel their scrutiny. The silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, the central figure leaned forward and spoke. "Archivist Derek, you have been investigating the Sol 3 anomaly." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Derek's throat tightened, but he forced himself to nod. "Yes, Counselor." The holographic figures exchanged glances. Then, another one spoke. "Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" Derek's hands clenched into fists. He could feel the pressure in the room, the unspoken warning. This wasn't just a routine inquiry. This was a test. Would he submit and deny what he found? Or would he stand by his discoveries? Slowly, he straightened his back and held his ground. "With all due respect, counselors," he said, his voice steadier than he expected, "I don't understand why this information has been buried." A tense silence followed. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Then, the central figure sighed. "Very well. You want to know the truth." The chamber darkened, and the walls came alive with light. The forbidden record. A holographic projection filled the chamber. Derek felt his breath hitch as he saw what appeared to be a video recording. Grainy, distorted, but unmistakably real. It showed a fleet, a massive armada of warships, sleek and gleaming, descending toward Earth. Derek's heart pounded. This was no small scouting mission. This was an invasion. A voice played over the recording, one of the fleet commanders. "Final approach to Sol 3. Humans are unaware of our presence. Engaging planetary suppression systems." Derek watched as the fleet activated its energy disruptors, designed to disable all electronic infrastructure on a planet. It should have rendered Earth helpless. But something went wrong. The screens glitched. The ships lurched violently, alarms blaring. "Sir, we're picking up interference. It's coming from the planet." Derek frowned. That was impossible. Earth had no technology advanced enough to interfere with a galactic fleet. And yet on the screen, the warships were spinning out of control, their systems failing one by one. Then came the voice. It crackled through the fleet's communications, low, calm, and chilling. "We see you." Derek shivered. The invading ships shut down instantly. Engines cut off. Weapons disabled. Not because of an attack. Because Earth had done something to them. Something no other species had ever done before. The camera feed flickered, then cut to black. For a long moment, the chamber was silent. Then the central counselor spoke. That was the last transmission from the invasion force. The fleet was never seen again. Derek's mouth went dry. An entire war fleet, one of the most powerful in the galaxy, vanished. Earth had erased them. And no one knew how. The human anomaly. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. What are they?" The council's holographic forms flickered. "That," one of them said, "is what we have spent the last 50 years trying to understand." Another counselor leaned forward. "Do you now understand why we classified Earth as Diont Evian Thenki Abogutiet?" Derek nodded slowly, his mind racing. Earth wasn't just a dangerous species. They were an unknown factor, a variable that defied logic. Their technology wasn't supposed to be advanced. And yet, they had somehow dismantled an entire war fleet without firing a single shot. The counselor's voice grew heavy. "We do not fear their weapons, Archivist. We fear their minds." Derek blinked. "Their minds." The counselor nodded. "They are not bound by the limitations of other species. They do not follow the same logic, the same rules. They improvise. They adapt. They think in ways we cannot predict." Another counselor added, "Every attempt to control, contain, or study them has only made them stronger. Derek swallowed hard. This wasn't just about military power. It was about something deeper. Something terrifyingly human. Archivist Derek. He looked up. This is not just a warning. This is an ultimatum. Forget what you have seen. Do not pursue this matter further. For your own safety. Derek hesitated. The council didn't make requests. They gave commands. And yet, somewhere deep inside him, he knew they were afraid. Not just of Earth, but of what Earth could become. He met their eyes, or at least the distorted holographic projections of them, and took a slow breath. Then, finally, he spoke. What if it's too late? The chamber was silent. Derek continued, his voice stronger now. What if humans already know about us? What if they're just waiting for the right moment? The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. One of them finally whispered, "Then, we pray that they choose to be our allies, not our conquerors." The unseen war. Derek left the council chamber with a storm raging inside him. For years, he had believed that knowledge was the foundation of civilization, the key to understanding, cooperation, and peace. But today, he had learned the greatest secret of the Galactic Council. And it wasn't about peace. It was about fear. Fear of a single species. Fear of humanity. He had barely stepped into his private quarters when his terminal flashed red. A new message, not from the council, but from someone else. The sender's ID was encrypted. No name. No designation. Just a simple, chilling message. They are already here. They have been here for years. If you want the truth, come find me. Derek's blood ran cold. The hidden signal. The next few hours were a blur. Derek had been trained in data security. He knew how to track signals, decrypt messages, and uncover hidden transmissions. But this signal, it wasn't like anything he had ever seen before. The message had bounced through over 1,000 relay points across the galaxy, disguised as random static, lost transmissions, and deleted data packets. Whoever sent it didn't want to be found. But they also wanted him to try. After hours of decryption, Derek finally isolated the message's source. It wasn't coming from some distant outpost. It was coming from inside the Council's own archives. Someone on this station had sent it. Someone who knew the truth about Earth. Derek's hands trembled as he activated his holopad and overrode the station's security access. If this was a trap, he was walking straight into it. But if it wasn't, then he was about to uncover the greatest conspiracy in galactic history. The man who wasn't there. Derek followed the encrypted signal down to the deepest level of the Council station, past layers of restricted access doors and forgotten corridors. This part of the station was silent. Not abandoned. Just erased. It was the kind of place that shouldn't exist. And yet here he was. At the end of the hallway, he found a single door. It wasn't marked. It wasn't labeled. And yet it opened the moment he approached it. Inside, a dim blue light flickered, illuminating the single desk. And sitting behind it was a human. Derek froze. He had never seen a human in person before. No one had. The Galactic Council had forbidden direct contact with Earth. And yet here was one of them. Waiting. Watching. He was older, his face lined with years of experience, his eyes sharp and assessing. And most disturbingly, he wasn't surprised to see Derek at all. "Welcome, Archivist," the human said, leaning back in his chair. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find me." Derek's mouth went dry. His instincts screamed at him to run. But he forced himself to step forward. You're human," he said, barely above a whisper. The man smiled. "Good. You're observant." Derek swallowed. "That's impossible. No humans have ever left Earth." The man raised an eyebrow. "Says who?" "The Council," Derek began, but the words caught in his throat. The Council. The same people who had buried the truth about Earth. The same people who had erased entire missions, entire fleets, entire histories just to keep Earth classified as Diont evn thenki abodutiet. The man leaned forward, his smile fading. The council lied to you, he said. They lied to everyone. Derek stared at him, his heart pounding. What are you? He whispered. The man's eyes glimmered. The first step in humanity's next move. The human problem. Derek sat across from the human, his mind racing. How? He finally asked. How are you here? How did you get past the council's defenses? The human chuckled. Oh, Derek, you still think your defenses mean anything to us? Derek frowned. The council's technology is centuries ahead of Earth's. The man just shook his head. That's what they want you to think. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, unassuming device. It looked primitive. It looked human. But when he placed it on the table, Derek's holoscreen shut off instantly. The lights flickered. The entire station's security grid briefly collapsed. The human smiled. Tell me, archivist, he said, if humans are so far behind, why is it that your people keep losing to us? Derek's breath hitched. The vanishing war fleets, the disabling of advanced ships, the classified records. Humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. And the worst part, the galaxy still didn't know how. Derek's fingers curled into fists. What do you want from me? The human leaned forward. To tell you the truth. Derek hesitated. Why me? The man's eyes glittered with amusement. Because you were smart enough to start asking the right questions. He tapped the table. And because you're about to learn why every species that messes with Earth regrets it. Derek exhaled slowly. He shouldn't be here. Everything he knew told him that this was insanity. But he couldn't walk away. Not now. Tell me, he said. And the human smiled. The Galactic Shadow War. You think the Council is afraid of our weapons? The human asked. Derek nodded. They are. Your planet wiped out an entire fleet without firing a shot. The human chuckled. That's what you think happened? Derek's stomach turned. What was he saying? The human continued. We didn't destroy those ships. Derek stared at him. Then, what happened to them? The human's grin widened. We let them go. Derek's blood ran cold. What? We didn't destroy them, the human repeated. We let them leave. We let them think they had escaped. Derek's mind whirled. Why? The human leaned back, watching him closely. Because we knew they'd run straight back to the Council. Derek's eyes widened. Humans weren't just fighting off invasions. They were manipulating their enemies. Every failed attack, every vanished fleet, none of it was random. It was all part of the plan. A slow, calculated psychological war. One designed to make every species in the galaxy terrified of Earth. Derek's stomach turned. You're playing with them. The human just smiled. We don't need to conquer anyone, Derek. He tapped his temple. We just need them to be too afraid to try anything. Derek swallowed hard. This wasn't just about war. This was strategy on a level no species had ever seen before. Earth wasn't just a threat. It was a trap. And the entire galaxy had already fallen into it.